The sterile hospital corridor echoed with the sound of expensive Italian leather shoes as Marcus Ashworth strode toward the family conference room, his perfectly tailored suit unable to hide the panic in his steel-gray eyes. Behind the closed door waited his wife Victoria, and somehow he knew his carefully constructed world was about to collapse. "Marcus," Victoria's voice was unnaturally calm as he entered. "Sit down. We need to discuss Aria's treatment." "Victoria, I told you already. The Swiss treatment is too experimental. We can't justify $2 million. Her voice cut through his rehearsed explanation like a blade. "That's what it costs to save our daughter's life. The same amount you just spent on a penthouse apartment for Celeste Romano." The blood drained from Marcus's face so rapidly that Victoria thought he might actually collapse into the conference room chair. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. How do you know about Celeste?" "I know everything, Marcus. The affair, the offshore accounts, the tax evasion scheme you've been running for 15 years. Everything." Victoria leaned forward, her honey blonde hair falling like a curtain around her face. "So, here's what's going to happen. You're going to fund Aria's treatment today, or I'm going to destroy everything you've ever built." "You're bluffing." Victoria smiled, and for the first time in months, it reached her eyes. "Am the first? Try me. Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you forgot they were capable of betrayal? Have you ever loved someone so deeply that when they broke your heart, it felt like your soul was shattered? Stay with me, because what happened next in this hospital room will leave you absolutely speechless. But before we dive in, if you believe that karma always finds a way, hit that like button and subscribe to Mr. David Love Stories for more incredible tales of justice and redemption. Let me take you back to where this story really began, 6 months earlier, in a world that seemed perfect from the outside but was rotting from within. Victoria Ashworth had always believed in fairy tales. At 32, she lived in a Manhattan penthouse that could have been ripped from the pages of Architectural Digest, married to a man who had built a $3 billion empire from nothing, with a 7-year-old daughter who was the light of both their lives. From the outside, the Ashworths were American royalty, beautiful, wealthy, and seemingly untouchable. But fairy tales, Victoria had learned, were just stories we told ourselves to avoid seeing the monsters hiding in plain sight. "Mommy, watch this," Aria called from the living room, her voice bright with the boundless energy of childhood. She was practicing pirouettes in her pink ballet slippers, her dark curls bouncing with each spin. Those green eyes, Marcus's eyes, sparkled with joy as she attempted increasingly ambitious moves on the marble floor. "Careful, sweetheart," Victoria laughed, looking up from her laptop where she'd been reviewing financial documents for Marcus's accountant. "Remember what happened to the vase last week?" Aria giggled, the sound like silver bells in the cavernous space of their home. "That was an accident. Besides, Daddy said he didn't like that vase anyway." Victoria's smile faltered slightly. Marcus had been saying a lot of things lately, coming home later, traveling more frequently, taking calls in private that made his voice drop to intimate whispers. She pushed the thoughts away, focusing instead on her daughter's impromptu performance. "Daddy!" Aria shrieked with delight as the front door opened. "You're home! Watch my new dance!" But when Victoria looked up expecting to see Marcus's usual warm smile at their daughter's enthusiasm, she found something else entirely. His face was flushed, his normally perfect hair slightly mussed, and there was a smear of lipstick on his collar that definitely wasn't her shade. "That's wonderful, Princess," Marcus said, his voice oddly strained. "But Daddy needs to take a shower. We'll watch your dance at dinner, okay?" "But Daddy—" "I said later, Aria." The sharpness in his tone made their daughter's face crumple slightly, and Victoria felt something cold settle in her stomach. "Marcus," she said carefully, "is everything all right? You seem—" "Just tired. Long day at the office." He was already moving toward the hallway, avoiding her eyes. "Don't wait up. I have some calls to make after dinner." Victoria watched him disappear down the corridor, noting the way he carried himself. Guilty, secretive, like a man harboring dangerous secrets. She had been a forensic accountant for the FBI before their marriage, and her instincts were rarely wrong. Something was happening to her husband. Something that made him look at his family like strangers. "Mommy," Aria's small voice broke through her thoughts. "Why does Daddy seem sad all the time now?" The question hit Victoria like a physical blow, because it forced her to acknowledge what she'd been trying to ignore for months. Marcus wasn't just distant, he was disappearing from their lives one day at a time. "Grown-ups sometimes go through difficult periods, sweetheart," Victoria said, pulling Arya into her lap. "It doesn't mean he loves us any less." But even as she spoke the words, Victoria wondered if they were true. 3 weeks later, Victoria sat in Dr. Sarah Henley's office at Mount Sinai Hospital, watching the pediatric oncologist's face with the desperate attention of a drowning woman searching for a lifeline. The words coming from Dr. Henley's mouth seemed to float in the air like foreign objects that her brain refused to process. "Acute lymphoblastic leukemia," Dr. Henley said gently. "The blood work confirms it. I know this is devastating news, but I want you to know that we've made incredible advances in treating childhood leukemia." Victoria felt the world tilt sideways. But she just had a cold. She was tired, had some bruises from playing. Children get bruises. "Mrs. Ashworth, I know this is overwhelming. The good news is that we caught it early. With aggressive treatment, the survival rates for all in children are very encouraging." Survival rates. The words tasted like ash in Victoria's mouth. "What are we talking about? What kind of treatment?" Dr. Henley spread several pamphlets across her desk, each one featuring smiling children with bald heads and bright eyes. "Chemotherapy will be our first line of treatment. It's intensive, and Arya will need to be hospitalized for extended periods, but..." "How extended?" Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. "Initially, several months, possibly longer, depending on how she responds." Victoria stared at the pamphlets, seeing her vibrant daughter transformed into one of those brave, bald children fighting for their lives. "I need to call my husband. Marcus needs to hear this from the doctor." But when Victoria tried reaching Marcus, his assistant informed her that he was in back-to-back meetings and couldn't be disturbed. When she called his cell phone, it went straight to voicemail. She left 3 increasingly frantic messages before Dr. Henley gently suggested they schedule another appointment when both parents could attend. It took Victoria 4 hours to finally reach Marcus, and when she did, his response chilled her to the bone. "Leukemia? Are you sure? Did you get a second opinion?" "Marcus, Dr. Henley is one of the best pediatric oncologists in the country. We need to start treatment immediately." Of course. Whatever she needs." But his voice sounded distant, distracted. "Listen, Victoria, I'm in the middle of a crucial acquisition. Can you handle the medical stuff for now? I'll catch up with the doctors when this deal closes." Victoria stood in the hospital parking garage, phone pressed to her ear, unable to believe what she was hearing. "Our daughter has cancer, Marcus. Your deal can wait." "It's not that simple. There are investors involved. Timing issues. Look, you're better with the medical details anyway. I trust you to make the right decisions." The line went dead, and Victoria stared at her phone in disbelief. Her daughter had just been diagnosed with a life-threatening illness, and her husband was worried about a business deal. That night, as she held Arya close and tried to explain in 7-year-old terms what was happening to her body, Victoria noticed something that made her blood run cold. On the nightstand beside their bed was Marcus's spare phone, the one he claimed to use only for international business. It was buzzing with text messages, and the preview showed a woman's name, Celeste. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow night. The lingerie you bought me is perfect. I love you, baby." Victoria's hands shook as she read the message, her world cracking apart like fragile glass. While she was learning that their daughter might die, Marcus was planning romantic evenings with another woman. The next 3 months became a blur of hospital corridors, chemotherapy sessions, and sleepless nights spent watching Arya's chest rise and fall in the pale green light of medical monitors. Victoria had effectively moved into Mount Sinai, sleeping in uncomfortable chairs and surviving on cafeteria coffee, while Marcus maintained his busy schedule of crucial meetings and unavoidable travel. "How's our little fighter today?" Dr. Henley asked during one of their weekly consultations, her voice carefully neutral in the way medical professionals perfected when delivering difficult news. Victoria looked at Arya, who was sleeping fitfully in the hospital bed. The chemotherapy had stolen her daughter's beautiful dark curls, leaving behind a scalp covered with soft peach fuzz. Her once rosy cheeks were pale and hollow, making her green eyes look enormous in her gaunt face. "The nausea is better," Victoria said, though the words felt inadequate to describe watching your child waste away before your eyes. "She actually ate half a sandwich yesterday." That's encouraging. Mrs. Ashworth, I need to discuss something with you. Dr. Henley's expression grew more serious. Arya's response to the current treatment protocol has been slower than we hoped. Victoria felt her stomach clench. What does that mean? Her white blood cell count isn't dropping as quickly as we'd like to see. We may need to consider more aggressive options. What kind of options? Dr. Henley pulled out a thick folder filled with medical papers and research studies. There's an experimental treatment being conducted at the University Hospital of Zurich. It's shown remarkable results with children who haven't responded optimally to standard chemotherapy. Victoria's heart leaped. That sounds promising. When can we start? Well, that's the challenge. It's an expensive program, and insurance doesn't typically cover experimental treatments. The cost would be approximately $2 million, including the treatment, hospitalization, and recovery period. $2 million. Victoria absorbed the number, thinking of Marcus's recent business expenses, the mysterious charges on their credit cards, the cash withdrawals, the way he'd been increasingly secretive about their finances. Insurance won't cover any of it? Unlikely. Experimental treatments are considered elective by most insurance companies, even when they represent a patient's best hope for survival. Dr. Henley, what are we talking about in terms of, if we don't pursue this treatment? The doctor's pause was answer enough. Mrs. Ashworth, without a more aggressive approach, we're looking at a very different conversation in the next few months. Victoria nodded, her throat too tight to speak. That night she called Marcus from Arya's bedside, watching their daughter sleep, while machines monitored every breath. $2 million? Marcus's voice was sharp with what sounded like annoyance rather than concern. Victoria, that's an enormous amount of money for an experimental treatment. What do the doctors say about her chances with conventional therapy? They say she needs this treatment, Marcus. It could save her life. Could. Nothing's guaranteed though, right? We could spend $2 million and still. He didn't finish the sentence, but Victoria heard what he wasn't saying. Are you seriously calculating the cost-benefit analysis of our daughter's life? I'm being realistic about medical expenses and uncertain outcomes. Victoria, I have obligations, investors, employees depending on me. I can't just throw money at problems without considering. Our daughter is not a problem to be solved with a cost-benefit analysis. Victoria's voice rose, causing Arya to stir in her sleep. She forced herself to whisper, Marcus, she's dying. The Swiss treatment is her best chance. Let me think about it. I need to review our financial position, talk to some people. Talk to what people? Marcus, what is going on with you? Ever since Arya got sick, I've been working 18-hour days trying to keep our lives together while you've been playing nurse at the hospital. Someone has to think about our financial future. The accusation hit Victoria like a slap. Playing nurse? I'm watching our daughter fight for her life. And I'm making sure we still have money to pay for that fight. Do you have any idea what my business is going through right now? The pressure I'm under? Victoria wanted to ask him about Celeste, about the mysterious phone calls and unexplained expenses, about the way he looked at his family like strangers. Instead, she said, I'm asking you to save our daughter's life. Everything else is just details. Everything else is reality, Victoria. I'll get back to you. The line went dead, and Victoria sat in the darkness of Arya's hospital room, finally understanding that her husband had already made his choice. The only question was whether she was strong enough to make hers. Little did Marcus know, the woman he'd married, the former FBI forensic accountant who had once brought down financial criminals, was about to remind him exactly who she used to be. And this time, it wouldn't be about justice for strangers. This time, it would be personal. End of part 1. The first half of this incredible story shows us how quickly our lives can change and how the people we trust most can become the greatest threats to everything we hold dear. But Victoria's story is just beginning, and what she does next will shock you to your core. Make sure you're subscribed to Mr. David Love Stories and hit that notification bell, because in the second half, you'll discover how a mother's love can become the most dangerous weapon in the world. Trust me, you won't want to miss what Victoria has planned for the man who chose his mistress over his dying daughter.